Okay, so I am on my beginning journey of making YouTube videos in a blog style, and I've avoided making content simply because I don't really offer any solutions, as I am in a big cocktail of problems and issues in my own life. And I think that coming on here and offering solutions and I don't have any of my own, and just playing the algorithm and saying things that are inspired by other people's solutions, it's not going to work because I don't put it into my own practice. So for the sake of authenticity and for the sake of trying something different, also because ChatGPT told me to make content, I'm just gonna go with my intuition and talk about kind of what's on topic and what's on mind currently. Although there are tons of things on my mind, but let's stay cohesive with this video. Okay, so the title of this video, I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but it will be talking about the topic of how I don't have a vocation or a sense of purpose or a particularly strong passion that I'm successful at. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I am grown up. I'm very grown up. So, all right. How could that possibly happen? I am about to turn 32 next month. So, what could have happened to me in the process where my developmental stages were stagnated in certain critical pockets of my life? Who this video might be useful for, I have no idea. Maybe it'll be useful for someone that doesn't want to feel alone. Maybe it'll be useful for someone needing to do a study on people who are like me. Maybe you are in therapy. Maybe you just want to hear authentically from a voice that is in the eye of the storm. And because maybe, like me, your algorithm and everything on your Instagram feed is solutions and therapists and spiritual gurus to help you, and yet it's just a kind of, not that they're not useful, they're incredibly useful, but you're bombarded with so many of the same messages or variations of the same thing. You're trying to put some things into practice and it's just maybe not working, or not working as immediately as you'd like. Because I've got to tell you, where I am today is in a much better place than where I was 5 years ago. Much better. But man, am I going through a lot of pain, and I'm just really holding it down well because, you know, of the changes I've made in the last 5 years. It's not that the pain of being lost and not knowing what to believe in anymore has been less painful, but I've gathered tools to sustain that pain. And I don't want it to continue to be painful, but I don't really see the pain going anywhere. So call it radical acceptance. But I'll make a separate video maybe on the, I guess I do have some solutions. Maybe I'll make a separate video later on things that have worked for me, though it hasn't solved everything in my life. So let's talk about the topic at hand. Why I still don't know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I'm not career driven. I'm not hyper successful, nor am I so independent that I feel safe in my own skin, safe in my own financial situation. Generally, anxiety and safety are a big theme in my life and have been pretty much since preschool. Oh my God, it's been so long. And I've had, I guess you could say, certain chapters in my life where I've had the illusion of safety, which never really lasted, and then the other shoe would drop. So what's gonna save me, right? I have to make a separate video on this topic too, about being saved, because I've turned to religion. I'm no longer telling myself I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. That's too vague. That's way too vague. I started to kind of integrate more of a religious system and devotion precisely for these reasons. Also, not sponsored at all, but this is the lip gloss of the moment right now. I freaking love this brand, Maybelline Lifter Gloss. Okay. No family is perfect. There's going to be some form of dysfunction. Let me tell you about the dysfunction that I was granted, that I had to deal with, which made all of this what I am today. So, why I don't have a vocation, why I'm still lost, why I'm attracting equally lost romantic partners. There's a lot of, there's a hot topic with avoidant and anxious personalities, and also a lot of women saying that a man should be able to secure you, which I agree to all of that. But in the meantime, being your best supporter and being able to advocate for yourself and stabilize yourself is of utmost importance before the right person comes into your life. What does this have to do with my vocation? I think I have been looking for my person and not my passion probably since I was 5 or 6 years old. I'm taking a pause because that's extremely potent, I mean, the Disney movies that I grew up with, I think anchored that in further, but I think that feeling came before the Disney movies came around. Why so? Well, I saw it in my own parents' marriage. That's what I suspect is where that feeling, that internal feeling of, because as far back as I can remember, I just had, I guess around the age of 6, I had the curiosity for the opposite sex, but I didn't see it as, they obviously are too young to see it as an opposite sex, but you saw it as a kindred spirit of sorts that you're meant to connect with. There's no one in particular that I was connecting with as a child, but that longing, that curiosity, that knowing that there's this other half that exists. I guess my earliest concept of that would be like an imaginary friend, right? But that there is another half that exists that's my supporter, my friend, my confidant. Like, why did I have that from so early on? And I guess I could narrow it down to Disney movies and really resonating with the princess, being treated like a princess by my own parents, and seeing my parents very much in love before dysfunction came into the picture. But my parents had really, really wanted a child. I was a wanted child. I was an intentionally had child, which I realize also affects your subconscious in really shaping ways, as opposed to, people that I've met along the way in my life who had parents who didn't want to be together, didn't necessarily want a child, but they did their best, and once the child was around, they loved the child to the best of their capabilities. So I do feel and I don't want to confuse anybody. I've confused people certainly along the way many times, that I have like a superiority complex, and I've carried that air about me for a while, simply because I come from a 2-parent household, but in my mind it never felt superior. It just felt like being my natural self. So this is where the first dysfunction was happening. It was happening really on the playground. I was way too soft with other children. Children were a little more rambunctious than I am, really knew how to stand up for themselves better than me. They could throw a punch, they could throw an object, they can be a little sass, be a little fresh, as they used to call it. I remember my preschool teacher saying, "Oh, don't worry about that girl, she's just fresh." Because I was really sensitive, and I was really oh my God, why would she do that to me? Because again, I came from a different function at home. I came from a home where 2 parents were treating me with a lot of love. I don't know. So the first bouts of anxiety for me probably were passed down from my parents, simply by way of them being immigrants in this country. They're not U.S. They were not born in the U.S. They are U.S. citizens, but not born in the United States. By the time preschool and getting introduced to other students or other children came around, I already was carrying some anxiety, as passed down through my parents because of their anxiety being immigrants in a new country. Now, my parents never shaped me to be as rambunctious as the other children. They shaped me to be a well-behaved, polite little girl. Just something different in our cultural household, in our culture in general, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a sociologist, but that's the extent of what I'm surmising. So then the second wave of anxiety came from the playground and playground dynamics and not being able to really click with anybody. And nothing about the students. I grew up in an area where I guess it was very multicultural. It wasn't one community of the same culture. In fact, I grew up in an area where all the immigrant families would move to, whether you were Muslim, Slavic, Spanish, Black, Jewish. They all kind of congregated in this area. But instead of finding a way to get along with all these subtle differences, before I even knew how to even think of it that way, I'm, a very small child. I just had a really hard time adapting, and I really needed mom. I was really clinging to mom. Mom was the only what I perceived the only source of love that was real, that was home, and then everyone else was just, I just couldn't find home or peace or playfulness with the other children. And I wanted to, but I was way too sensitive, very easily, very easy to knock me off balance, just really sensitive, not really anchored or strong in my identity or who I am in any way. I wouldn't really exert my identity on anybody. So I just cried. I don't know. So there was no expression of play for me that boded well with other kids easily. And I just had a lot of anxiety. Moving forward, K to 12. In a nutshell, K to 12, you're learning your identity in relationship to other children, of course, but also you're understanding your identity and where you come from with your own family. The first thing I identified with within my family was that there were financial problems, but I didn't realize they were financial problems. I just felt the stress from my parents about there not being any money. But my parents, particularly my mom, who's an amazing homemaker, made our very small apartment in a less than desirable neighborhood, made it like a little paradise. Like, my mom is incredible. She managed to polish a turd, to put it simply. So in that regard, I felt very rich. My dad was present to the best of his abilities. He worked a lot, like a horse, multiple jobs. So when I did see him, it was like a big breath of joy that daddy's home. He would spend time with me to the best of his abilities, and he did a great job, and then went back right to sleep because he needed to rest for the next day of work. So a hardworking man, a very nurturing homemaker. Those were my parents. But the dysfunction came witnessing the two of them not find common ground with each other on how to manage financial challenges in a new country. And that was passed down to me. A kind of fear around not having enough. And I did not dislike my apartment. I actually loved my apartment because of how mom made it feel like home. But then it didn't hit me right away. But then I did go over some friends' houses. You know, children who had like homes, like a house, like a proper house, I guess. And then it slowly started to kind of dawn on me that, oh, okay, we're different in this regard. And then it started to dawn on me that, oh, my parents are more stressed than my friends' parents in this way that seemed obvious to me because my American peers seem to have better community with each other. My parents didn't have a community or real friends that they could rely on. It was just the two of them against the world. Some friends here and there and family that was spread out. I had an aunt in Florida and most of the extended family in Europe. Their adjustment in the States, very different from how they lived in Europe. They lived in a way that they're, I guess you can call them community leaders within their own town, in their own home country. And then here in the US, they were a humble, low-income family. Anyway, so what does this have to do with my vocation? These memories hold a lot of power and weight on me, because I don't really remember a time where I felt like I could really catch my breath to know what it is that I even like, to even know what it is to have confidence in myself. I was prone to being bullied, not just by my older sibling, but by other children. And I don't blame any one of them. Part of me also thinks that the bullying built character, but the bullying also broke me down and took away many years of my ability to even find who I am. I spent a lot of time worrying about my parents, about their dynamic. I spent a lot of time, like probably many children who've been in my shoes do, taking on that weight. I remember trying to give them age-old wise therapeutic advice, which I'd never read in a book. It was innate within me. It was an innate feeling within me to choose love over war, let's say. Even though as a child you don't know the complexity of the circumstance that they're in, but you feel an innate wisdom that there must be a better way than how they might be dealing with it. And adults who are too bogged down by their problems are not going to listen to a child. What does a child know? That anxiety still lives in my body today. This feeling of helplessness, that nothing I can do can make a difference. Let's move on to teenage years. So without finding a talent, without being able to catch my breath, without having the tools or the recognition by a teacher to say, hey, this kid needs like meditation practices. I mean, that wasn't really around anyway. Not in our school. This was the 90s. Early 90s. I have a friend staying with me. I just want to make sure she's all right. Sorry, folks, you just have to give me a second. She's calling me because my phone is on silent. That's a good challenge. Let me see if I can finish this video in 30 minutes or less. So without that initial direction, the one thing I had is that I loved to draw, and I liked poetry. And I liked to dance and to act. But with the bullying from the kids, I hardly felt that there were many opportunities for me to express myself. In fact, by the time recess was around, I just sat in a corner. I didn't really play much with others. The Game Boy came out, so I played a lot on my Game Boy. Teenagehood. In my adolescent years, thank God, one teacher spotted my creative abilities and said, we're gonna pluck you out of this art class and put you into the I guess the extracurricular, the more advanced placement art classes. And we're going to teach you art fundamentals, and you're going to be doing your own portfolio. Whoa. So that was really the first time I was really recognized for a talent that I didn't even perceive as a talent. And I was awarded and given recognition for my artistic talents, which in a immigrant family doesn't bode too well. Not that my parents weren't happy for me, but painting doesn't pay the bills. And to make a long story even shorter, I did not have the most supportive friends or the most admirable peer group. They were nice kids, but were nice teens. But no real group that I felt like I could really click with and be myself with. So we know the trials and tribulations of teenagehood, how girls can be vicious with one another. We know the common stereotype of the nerdy girl looking at the popular girls and wanting to be just like them. All in all, this is all to say, just more distraction from finding out who I am at my soul and what I want to do in my life. First, I was surviving the anxiety of the dysfunction I had at home with my parents who, although very loving, really weighed down by their financial issues. But also, I lost my train of thought. Forgive me. And in teenagehood, just another breed of anxiety, just learning to fit in. So my life was never thriving in anything, but rather stumbling into things and then stumbling out of things. Because early adulthood, ages 18 and up, although I got my first job at 15, I got my working papers for it, I worked at a store. A lot of my life was just about surviving the bullies, surviving my parents' marital issues, financial issues, surviving anxiety with just being able to socialize and be accepted. I mean, it took years. Surviving self-image issues, which deserves another video in of itself. Early adulthood, I have this crazy growth spurt where all of a sudden I, for lack of a better term, became more beautiful. And I just grew into being a young woman. And I got a lot of attention I wasn't ready for. From having no attention from boys, and at least not boys that I liked. It was boys that were kind of creepy. I got attention from older men. Looking at my 20-year-old image. And I thought, that's my opportunity right there to get out of this town, find out who I am finally, and start over my life with all these opportunities that I didn't have as a kid. I was still trying to rewrite the story of like my own infancy in childhood, now my early adulthood, by dating older men with money who I thought would save me from an issue that was deep within my soul and through my upbringing, which I will give a story on later. In my 20s, I learned a lot about energy exchange, dynamics between men and women, different archetypes of being a woman, different archetypes of being a man. I learned a lot about sin. I learned a lot about narcissistic men, abusive men. The trials and tribulations were at points I thought I could not survive another day on this planet. Which leads me to where I am today. I've navigated those situations with the abuse, the not knowing who I am in the mix of all of it, and still not knowing my vocation and what I want to do. Because I wasted my time with predatory men. And I wasted my time looking for solutions in all the wrong places. Fast forward, present day. I am freshly broken up with someone I thought I was going to marry, which I also thought was my ticket to finally having the peaceful trajectory in life of finding out who I am. Because the man I wanted to marry promised to afford provision and protection. Finally, I can quit a job that I forced myself to have in order to survive, like I did with all my jobs. Not from passion, but from practicality. I gotta feed myself, I gotta pay my rent. Finally, I get to marry and I get to relax and I get to find out who I really am. Okay. And then what I can do to monetize off who I really am. That didn't work, clearly. So for anyone that is in their 30s and still vocationless, and you have a similar story to me as to why all this time you didn't really get a good chance to find out who you are, because you had to manage high degrees of abuse or feeling lost or anxiety. One thing that's helped me along the way to getting at least inching a little closer to it: sobriety, being totally lucid, accepting your pain, and following a little cookie crumb trail that God maybe leaves behind for you to follow. You just have to have better discernment and listen carefully along the way. Late in life, I found dancing. That was a great passion of mine. Unfortunately, I can't make a profession out of it. I don't think so, at least, because I was not a gymnast as a kid. I did not go to dance classes as a kid. I was petrified of classes or anything. My parents were also petrified of my emotions. For example, they took me horseback riding one time and I cried all my emotions out because I was just such an anxious kid that feeling the powerful, ambient, healing nature of a horse made me so emotional. My parents did not know how to manage someone that they tried. They really did. I adore my parents and my best friends. But even I guess you would call me an empath, highly sensitive person. I have some mild psychic abilities, which I think anyone can have, really. Anyway, dance was an opportunity also as a child, but I was so clinging to mom, I couldn't be in a classroom for 30 minutes alone without her. Is this giving anxious attachment much? So here I am. I work in an art gallery in New York. I am a dancer as a hobby. In my fantasy realm, I would have loved to have been a professional dancer. But for now, it's what fuels my soul. It's what feeds it. So I dance as much as I can throughout the week. The art gallery, I will make another video about that. It's got positive and negatives. It's not quite what I want to be doing. And in the process of finding true love, which you might remember in the beginning of the video, a kind of second half that I felt for a very long time in my soul. Embarking on that journey has been just wow. A lot of disappointment. So I'm starting a YouTube channel, and I'll try to make some content about what's working for me, what isn't working for me. It might help me and it might help you. So this will be about a woman living in a big metropolitan city, still becoming, still very much becoming. And the trials and tribulations I face in just trying to sustain my vitality, my health, my hope, and to pursue passion, pursue a kind of paradise on earth, if you will, not just for me, but for all. Finding where I can be a community leader, where I can be helpful and contribute, while also being totally myself. So far, I love the dancing a lot, but I'm still a student of dance at 32. I'm not getting any younger. And my relationship with time, that time is finite in this world. And then the longing for what you might call the love of my life, who every time I think that might be the one, turns out to be just me being a little naive. But more on that later. Be sober, follow the cookie crumb trail. And that's all I got for now. And we'll see what else I land on to make my life that much more a relief, alignment, self-actualized. Because I think what I want is what anybody wants. I think we all want the same thing. But I am trying my darn hardest to do it in a way that no longer hurts me, no longer hurts people around me. Out with the zero-sum games. There's got to be a better way. So I hope this helps. And until next time, See you later.